Thank you for staying tuned. It is still the conversation here on Lagos Television. And right now we are diving into an important topic that concerns every Lagos resident. And what is that topic? It is Sanwo-Olu's developmental drive in 2025. Joining us here is Nelson Ekujimi. He is a social affairs commentator and he brings wealth of experience in analyzing the current administration's developmental agenda in 2025. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Good day, viewers.
It's always delight to have you here. You know, as we approach the end of the year, it has become important to, assess how well or how fair this government has done in the year 2025. So from your own perspective, let's just look at it generally before we begin to break it down. We might not be able to touch all sectors, but we'll do as time permits. But generally, looking at the year 2025, how would you assess the developmental approach of this present administration?
Well, thank you very much. When Lagosians went to the polls on February 2023 to elect a governor, the people of Lagos, the mass majority of Lagosians, renewed the mandate of Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu for a second term as a result of his sterling performance in his first term. And on assumption into office, he launched the T.H.E.M.E.SPlus agenda. You know, the first tenure was the T.H.E.M.E.S agenda. And looking at the T.H.E.M.E.SPlus agenda, any discerning Lagosian would definitely thump his chest and say, I did the right thing when I went to the polls to vote for this servant of the people to continue in office. Looking at his developmental strides in the last 2 years, because it's about 2 years plus now, one would say Mr. Sanwo-Olu has done very, very well. Is it in education? Is it in roads, infrastructure? Is it in health? Is it in water transportation? Is it in even support for artisans, training and what have you? So looking at the last 2 years as a typical Oliver Twist that human beings are, the government has done well, but we'll continue to ask for more.
The reward for hard work, how did they say it is more work?
Absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's just go into infrastructure. Now, in this year, a lot of projects was done by this present administration. You had some commissioning of roads in some parts of the state. But again, let's just look at it generally now, looking at infrastructure. How well do you think they have done?
Well, within anybody who has looked at our infrastructure will definitely know that to put in place infrastructure requires funding. And before the coming to office of the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the center, a lot of states were grappling with, finance. And it was a result of the hemorrhaging of the economy by the fuel subsidy, regime. But since he came into office, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has freed a lot of resources for the states. Even right now as we sit here, I remember vividly where some weeks back, I think that was in November, the governor was in the Lagos State House of Assembly to present the 2026 budget. And one of the key areas of infrastructural renewal that he talked about was the provision of street lights. You go to almost every part of Lagos today, street lights are, being installed, or some have become operational. In fact, yesterday when I was on Ikorodu Road, I wanted to take a count of the newly installed, street lights. So the infrastructural renewal of the administration has been all-encompassing. Why do I say this? If you look at some of the roads that we have had these street lights being installed, ordinarily, if it were in some place, in some other states, they might be saying this is a state road, or this is a federal road, or this is a local government road. But the government has taken it upon itself to ensure that the whole Lagos as a city is lit up. And for that, I say a big kudos. Then you also look at the area of roads, for example. There's this beautiful road, Okpebi to Odoyalaru, where you link Ojota. I can't just wait for that road to be opened. Yeah. I want to be one of the first people that will apply that road. I don't know, maybe there will be a price for that. Then you talk about You talk about roads that were commissioned, you know, or bridges. Any person who lived in Lagos before and had the opportunity of traveling out of Lagos, I'm sure if he comes back to Lagos that we have now, he or she would definitely get lost. If he or she is driving a vehicle, there's the possibility, high possibility, of him contravening the traffic rules. Because you go on, look at the Ikeja, the overhead bridge. It has reduced travel time on that road. You look at the Penn Cinema Bridge, for example. You look at the Oyingbo. There's a pedestrian. There's a vehicle, flyover to Oyingbo. There's a flyover at Ojuelegba. There's a flyover at Ojuelegba. And you know, when you go to, recently I was opportune to drive to the Elemoro axis.
Where is that?
Elemoro, that's Lekki Aja, as if you are going to Ibeju Lekki axis. And I saw the quality of the road there. Don't forget, that road is, it's a road that must have been done with the hindsight of the Lekki Free Trade Zone, even though the federal government has come to complement that effort with the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. So you look at our Ikeja here, for example, you look at the Allen roundabout, and even on the Allen axis, if you apply that road regularly, you know that a lot of construction is ongoing, you know, on that axis from the Okpebi. It's like the government is trying to widen, expand the road. So you talk about health, for example. There's the Mercy Hospital that has been, you know, reconstructed, and the government is also investing in a primary health center, aiding that function of the local government, because the local government alone cannot do it.
As you mentioned local government, now that's where I want to come to, because again, the state government will do all that it can, but the local government also has a role to play. And so how do you see, I know that they are just new in office, they are all celebrating 100 days in office, but again, how do you see them complementing the efforts of the state government?
I think it is imperative on the local governments. Don't also forget that we have 3 tiers of government, and they all have their specific functions as outlined in the Constitution. The mistake a lot of us make as Nigerians is that when anything happens in our states, even in our locality, we tend to look up to Abuja.
And president.
Yes, president. If a man is involved in domestic violence with his wife, he said before they realize that there's a domestic violence agency even in Lagos State, they will start calling on Abuja. And that misplaced or warped mindset is also prevalent in states where areas of competence under the Constitution assigned to local government, people tend to hold the state governments accountable for it. For example, somebody wrote an article not too long ago, and he was castigating the local state government for, I think he saw some lapses in some PHCs, that's the primary health centers. But anybody who is discerning enough will know that PHCs fall under the jurisdiction of local government. So I think it builds on we Lagosians ourselves to look at our various local governments and hold our individual local governments accountable for one, provision of good roads, provision of markets, primary health center, our primary schools, ensure that our primary schools are up to standard, the classrooms are well equipped, the teachers, their welfare is well taken care of. Then you talk about culverts and even security. Because even the local government, as a tier of government, has a responsibility for the provision of security and welfare of the people. We should hold the local government. So if the local governments are conscious of the fact that they have a well-informed citizenry, then they themselves will have to sit up to know that whatever the state government is doing, if they abdicate their responsibility, it will pale to nothing. But if you look at the last administration of local government in Lagos, if you were witness to when they were exiting office, prior to when they were winding down, a lot of them were involved in projects that even state governments outside Lagos, they are not venturing into. For example, I live in Orile Agege, LCDA, and my local government, my LCDA chairman, Honorable Pastor Johnson Sunday,
the former chairman.
The former chairman. You need to see the number of roads the man reconstructed and constructed. The man also ventured into our security architecture of our local government, our LCD, in terms of putting in place street lights almost in every part or every nook and cranny. If you go to our Agege, for example, as an instance, I'm just using it as a case study. I hope others are watching and their cities, the residents are ready to hold them, accountable for their being in office. You know that definitely we living in this local government and LCD are feeling the impact of governance at that level.
Okay. So let's move to transportation now, or still infrastructure transportation. We have the rail projects, we have the red line, the blue line, and the preparations for the green and purple lines are on way as well. For you, how would you assess the impact of this on mobility and urban development?
Oh, the impact cannot be overemphasized. I was given birth to, lived and was brought up in Igomu, Ijora axis. And I know what my people go through every morning to go to, because a lot of the residents in that area do their business on the island. So the movement in the morning to the island was always hectic. Then the return journey in the evening is also the same thing, to the extent that when the people have closed from the markets and their businesses in the evenings and they are returning home, if you see the crowd on top of that Akongbon bridge waiting to board the Molu of those days, which are no longer in existence. But today, all that is a thing of the past because of the mobility that the Blue Rail Line has provided. And what gladdens my heart about the administration, that a lot of us have decided that, look, we'll continue to support this administration so long as it's on the right track, is that you look at the Blue Rail Line and the Red Rail Line, for example. I've entered I've been a commuter on that, on both Red Line and the Blue Rail Lines. And I'll tell you for free, Lagos can never be the same again. Because the convenience of movement, even if you take aside the rail transportation, look at the BRT corridors, for example. Look at the investment until we had the sad occurrence of 2020. That's the NSAS, what have you. So the infrastructural development in terms of transportation, a lot still needs to be done. For example, I'm aware that the federal government has put in place measures for the use of CNG to reduce transportation costs and make investment in that sector, very viable. But if you look at our state in Lagos, the level of investment in the CNG mechanism as a means of oiling the transportation sector is still very low. That is why there's a petrol station on this axis. You and I know. From morning till night, there's always queue. There's always queue of vehicles for CNG. So I'm not happy about that. I want to see maybe 4 or 5 CNG plant or stations within this axis so that people can easily convert their vehicle, and it will bring down the cost of living, because a critical factor that affects the cost of living is mobility, vehicle for transportation. Even though we are aware that a lot of our people have been beneficiaries of these lagis as commercial vehicles, because you and I know very well that, and I'm sure our viewers also know that, the CNG platform has been accessed commercial businesses free of charge by the federal government. If you have a commercial vehicle, whether as a taxi, as a truck, or as a bus, you are allowed to come into the CNG system and convert your vehicle to CNG free of charge. You don't have to pay, unlike private businesses. If you are running a business that has to do with offering service to the people. So you look at the investment in rail transportation by the Lagos State government, And also, don't forget the new boats, ferries that were launched.
Water transportation.
You know, water transportation is also very key. So the benefits of the administration of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu to the life of Lagosians is something we cannot toy with. It's something that gladdens our heart, that we are looking forward to whoever will succeed him to up the ante.
And talking about, you know, raising the bar from where you just stopped now, what are there some challenges that you have, or some holes that you have picked that you'd, if you were to give an advice in ensuring that road maintenance, these infrastructures, you know, because sustainability is key, and continuity too, because this government will go, another will come, and so
but the people of Lagos
remains. Yeah. So what are some of the challenges that you have seen and you would like to see some changes?
The greatest challenge I've seen with regards to our democratic governance is the attitude of our people. That is one key area that one is not happy that we have not done well about. Government spends a lot of money to put up pedestrian bridges all over the place, and you see people dashing across the express road. You see motorists driving on the road, stopping indiscriminately, causing traffic jam, you know, wasting precious time on the road. You see government street lights, traffic lights. You see one standing in the morning. By the time you are coming back in the evening, it has been knocked down. You see traffic lights, the same thing happens. So the area I feel as much as government is putting in place all these infrastructures, I think it is also important that government also put in place measures that will change the orientation of people to recognize that this infrastructure is for you and I. And we must take, like, I'm very much aware that when the governor commissions, even if it is housing, the other time I was at this Lagos Lasu Iba Road, I think Igondo. There was an housing estate that was commissioned by the governor. Then just some few weeks back, the governor was also somewhere in how do you call it? Abraham Adesoya, if you remember, to commission that housing estate. So when you see government putting in place these facilities, it is our responsibility to ensure that those facilities are not vandalized. Then, talking about that, I think the government itself also needs to provide a mechanism where people can easily relate with the government when they see something, like we say, they are ready to say something. A lot of times when people have witnessed these infractions that borders on abuse of public properties, it's like we don't know who to call. For example, if I'm driving on the road and I see a vehicle knock down, you know, a street light, or any government, or somebody digging the road, or somebody discharging waste, there's a perpetual waste discharge on this Mobolaji Bank Anthony Way. That's after the Lagos Country Club. When you are moving down to Maryland, that place is always flooded with water. I wonder who is discharging this water into. If there's a leakage of a pipe there, then they need to fix it. Then we talk about the attitude to waste disposal. A lot of our people, that is where I talked about the attitude. I think the government itself, as much as we are putting in place this infrastructure, if we don't orientate the people will mess it up, and that is exactly what we are seeing.
And so taking it up from talking about the people now, again, where comes in the role of the CDCs? Because again, everyone belongs to a community.
Absolutely.
And so if these things are being perpetrated, it is done in a community. And there are people who are leaders of that community, and that community is under a local government. So what is the role of the CDCs and the leaders of the community in this?
Well, thank you very much. You know, we live in I was watching a presentation by a musician of repute, Busta Rhymes. I don't know whether these Gen Zs know who is called Busta Rhymes, but you know, our generation, we rolled with Busta Rhymes in his heydays. And Buster Rhymes was talking, motivationally about the society in which he grew up. He said the society in which he grew up was a society where the community trains the child. Where if you do something wrong and you are spanked by your neighbor, you dare not cry home. You take round 2 and 3.
But if the neighbor does not even get home before you.
Yes, but now we live in a society where people tell you that ma bami no more me. And for people like us, we are saddened by it. I've been a victim of it. Where somebody's child did something wrong and I spanked the young boy. And when I got home, my wife was like, why did you touch the boy? And I was like, Abba, should I have allowed him to continue that? He said the mother came to her and was complaining. I was scared. Since that day, I vowed that thank you for this education. I will never try it again. I never knew. I was still living in the past of how we were brought up, where everybody brings up a child. And like I told a gathering not too long ago, I said, in this same society, in the not too long ago, it takes a policeman to arrest just a whole community. If a policeman comes into community and says he is here to arrest somebody, everybody will come up and surrender that person. But to arrest one person in this same society today, you need a battalion, because some people will come up and tell you, why are you arresting him? And it gets me worried that, look, the law enforcement officers have a duty to perform. You don't, as much as you have a right, you don't have a right to interfere in the discharge of his function. Asking him, why is he arrested? Are you the one who's coming to arrest? If the man has a reason to arrest Mr. A, then let it be. All you need to know is maybe you ask the officer, please, which station are you from? So that you can follow up, later. But trying to stand and obstruct him from the discharge of his constitutional responsibility, I think is a no-go area. And those are areas I believe strongly we need to work on. Talking about the CDA and CDCs, the closest to the CDAs and CDCs is the local government. Recently, I was opportune to learn that the Lagos State Ministry of Transportation was working in synergy with the local government with regards to street trading. Because a lot of the menace we see on our roads that have been turned, our roads that have been turned into a market, are all done with the prompting, with the support, with the enablement of the local government. So the CDA and CDC are responsible to the local government. If we have a responsible local government administration that knows its onions, definitely that the CDAs and CDCs will also be very virile. But a situation whereby the CDAs and CDCs only exist when there's a program at the local government. The moment the local government is done with its program, the CDAs and CDCs, they are left to do whatever they like. No, that is why we have this attitudinal problem. Because if we have a functional CDAs and CDCs like we used to have, definitely a lot of this engagement, this education, this taking charge of public properties, the CDAs and CDCs will be the #1 watchdog, so that when they see these things, immediately they escalate it to the local government. It can be escalated further if the local government cannot handle it. But because the local government administration themselves, are also guilty of not being up and doing, so it's a tall order for them to be able to whip CDAs and CDCs into line.
All right, you mentioned housing earlier while you were talking about some of the infrastructures delivered by this present administration. Now, Lagos is densely populated and you have a lot of people trooping in on a daily basis. But again, looking at the rate at which the administration has done, or the way they have fared when it has to do with housing, and weigh it with the population, do you think the government is doing well, and how can they do more?
Well, I wrote an article not just recently, but 2 weeks ago, and it was about housing crisis. And one fact you must admit is that housing crisis is a global
issue,
phenomenon. It's not only a Nigerian thing. People migrate from A to be, you know, in search of better opportunities, to get married, to get, you know,
Green
and what have you.
pastures.
And when human beings migrate, housing becomes an issue. Just recently in Spain, I think in the Basque region, they were discussing about, I think it was about migration, that there were some festivals that holds there. And as a result of the festival, the cost of housing has shot up that it is beyond the reach of the average, you know, citizen. And they were all complaining that they don't want those festivals to hold any longer in their country, that it is skyrocketing the cost of accommodation. Just some few days ago, I think it was in, was it Sweden, where a community where people came out and they were protesting about the high cost of rents, that they could not afford it. So if you look at housing, the resources to put up accommodation anywhere in the world, it's enormous. And that is why you see that some of those housing projects are being done in collaboration with private entities. So the government, you and I know very well, like it's a fact that government does not have a tree or a farm where they plant money and they go there maybe at night or harvest time to harvest. Maybe if they have planted 1 naira, the 1 naira would have germinated and become 1 million naira. I don't think there's any farm like that in the world. Government gets its resources from revenues, taxes, levies, tolls, licenses, royalties, and what have you. So government will provide the area of wants or people's needs confronting government is multifaceted. As the government is addressing housing, is addressing education, is addressing water, is addressing security, is addressing roads. So the government will not abdicate its responsibility in one area for the other. It has to share the resources across board. So talking about housing, one thing again you must also recognize is that Lagos has the smallest land mass. That is why I've not been to Israel, somebody was talking about in Israel, he said, if somebody builds a story building, you can pay to build yours on it. I don't know how true it is. That we need accommodations that are skyscrapers because of the small land mass, so that we can have more, you know, accommodation opportunities for people. But looking at accommodation, as we said, we have seen local governments, even in Lagos here. I think it was is it Kushofe or Isheri? The last administration built somewhere K2, yes, the local government administration. I think it went into partnership with some private entities, and it constructed some houses. Housing construction is ongoing all over the state, but because of the huge influx of people into Lagos, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, for the government to meet the housing needs of the people. It's a tall order.
All right. Let's move on now to the economy and employment. Just this morning, I read at the maiden Lagos MSMEs exclusive and Eco Round City Trade Fair held at the National Stadium in Surulere, Governor Sanwo-Olu acknowledged that the MSMEs form the backbone of Lagos economy. And I read that story last week too, and he said the trade fair was expecting over 3,000 participants. Yeah. So let's talk about how well has the government supported MSMEs in Lagos, seeing that they are the backbone of the economy?
Well, I think we can be able to make a conclusive statement of that if we research into how the government has responded to MSMEs. But I'm aware that at a point in the life of these states, we had a Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, which was providing trainings and fundings to MSMEs. As I sit here, I know a lot of persons who benefited and who also were faithful in what they benefited in repaying back.
Very important.
Yes, and I'm also aware that when they repaid back, because I was involved. That's why I can speak authoritatively on it. I'm also aware that those that got, say, 500,000 naira, after they repaid that grant, were called upon to come and access higher fund. That they were told, we can't give you 500 any longer because you have shown faith with this little one. So we need to upgrade you. So we need to interrogate how the Lagos State government has funded that agency. But I'm aware that the Ministry of Commerce and as well as the Ministry of Wealth Creation have a lot of programs where people are trained to become SMEs, where people are given materials as well as cash to go and set up. Even as we sit down here this morning, on coming into the studio, I saw that a program for MSMEs is taking place within your premises here. And I'm sure the MSMEs that will be coming there are going to smile home today. They are going to be empowered. So we can only be able to speak authoritatively about how impactful the government's contribution has been, even though Mr. Governor has recognized that. But we cannot shy away from the fact that we are aware, we see, and we hear when government is empowering MSMEs, whether the empowerment is enough or whether the percentage of that empowerment is huge enough is what I cannot tell you here because I don't have the facts. But I'm aware that the last time there was a program for MSMEs here in your premises at the Blue Roof, I think almost about 3 to 10,000. I even watched it on TV, where Mr. Governor was handing over, checks, dummy checks, as well as tools to these small-scale entrepreneurs. So I think the government is doing it, is playing its part. It is for us to also ask our local governments, in what way are they encouraging the MSMEs in their locality? The man who has opened a shop, maybe it's a supermarket, and he has employed 5 or 10 persons who are working. He's also an MSME because he's providing employment and, bolstering our economy. So we need to, as much as we appreciate what the state government is doing, we also need to make the local government recognize that their responsibility is also to the economic well-being of the people, and not only to just tell us that you have constructed roads. How have you engaged the MSMEs? Because one of the problems that I know MSMEs have, which a lot of them have complained, is the excessive taxation. That also they tend to tell you, all sorts of people come to us, they will tell them they have not paid for this, we have not paid for that. So we need to harmonize the taxation system in the state so that the MSMEs will know what is due for them to pay at what time. In that way, we'll be curbing corruption.
Just briefly before we go, we can't end this conversation without talking about, because you mentioned it earlier, about the budget for 2026. Looking ahead now, because 2025 is almost over,
by the grace of God.
The governor presented the appropriation bill. It was last week or so. It's a budget of 4.237 trillion, budget of prosperity. For you, what are your expectations, when you saw that amount? Because that's like the highest recorded in the history of Lagos.
For Lagos, yes.
Yes. So for you, what are your expectations for that budget? Well,
my expectations for the budget is that the budget captured areas of the economy in need of government's attention. And my expectation is that the resources, to be able to actualize that budget, that will be able to harness the resources, because a budget is a statement of intent. You can budget that you want to build 10 houses. At the end of the day, if you have money for just 2, that 2 will not become 10. So you have to build. So I'm very hopeful that we have started seeing the part of the budgetary provision in the 2026 budget was what the administration is already doing with the lighting up Lagos, for example. So I expect that the House of Assembly, because I know right now the House of Assembly committee on the various sectors of the economy enunciated in that budget, will be taking representations from the various ministries, departments, and agencies. So I just hope that the state will be able to harness the necessary finances to be able to actualize that budget, because you talked about the budget of 2026 being bigger than last year. If you know the number of people that have come into Lagos, and even don't forget that we are in December, and it's called Dirty December. And all over the place, a lot of programs are going to be. Just yesterday, I was on a program, and I had the Commissioner for Agriculture talking about the Lagos food fair that we're holding on, I think, on Sunday, 14th, at Muri-Okunla Park, where she said last year when the program held that they had about 7,000 participants, but that as of today, that the total number of people that have registered to participate is over 10,000. That tells you clearly a lot of persons are coming into Lagos to do business. So one expects that the budget items that the state government will be able to harness enough finance to be able to execute them, so that we can at least let us have a 100% budget implementation in 2026.
Thank you so much, Nelson Ekujimi. He is a social affairs commentator. He has shared his thoughts on Sanwo-Olu's developmental drive in 2025, and we are hopeful, looking forward to 2026, God willing. Thank you again for your time on the
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
The program continues shortly. Stay with us.